couple months ago, I went on a trip with the group travel company Contiki. And if you've never heard of group travel companies, they plan all the logistics of a trip for you, from the location, the dates, the transportation, and even the meals. They do all the logistics and planning for you, so all that you have to do is theoretically show up and enjoy yourself. There are many different group travel companies out there, such as Contiki, EF Ultimate Breaks, EF Go Ahead Tours, G Adventures, Intrepid, so many out there. I first heard about group travel companies as well as the trip I went on through the YouTuber Morgan Yates. Through watching Morgan's videos, she has been on numerous trips with, I believe, Contiki and EF Ultimate Breaks, so I had a good understanding of what those trips entailed. And in her most recent video that I was watching at the time, she was advertising an upcoming trip for which she was hosting in partnership with Contiki, and that trip was the Rome to Barcelona by train. And I was so intrigued. It would be an opportunity to meet a YouTuber that I watched, travel to some cities that I haven't been to before, and travel by train, which I love train travel. So I researched the trip, the dates, and the price of the trip were within time that I could take off from work, as well as my budget, so it was a no-brainer. Since posting those vlogs, I've received a handful of questions about the Rome to Barcelona by train trip, as well as group travel companies, so I thought I would make a video to talk about my thoughts and opinions of that trip and group travel companies as a whole. I did receive a lot of good questions from one viewer, Namtha. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So I will be reading some of her questions here in a bit because she asked some fantastic questions. So a little bit of background of the trip and Contiki. Contiki restricts their travelers going on their trips to those who are 18 to 35 years old. And I believe EF Ultimate Breaks restricts their age range as well. There are other group travel companies that are open to older age ranges, but Contiki and EF Ultimate Breaks specifically restrict theirs to a certain age range. And at the time that that trip was being offered, I was at the top section of the age range. I was 35 years old. In fact, a couple months after the trip ended, I turned 36. So one concern I did have was if I was going to mesh well with other people on the trip, if there was going to be a huge age gap between those who may be 18 years old and I'm 35, there's a lot of life lived in between those years. So that was a concern. The trip itself started in Rome and ended in Barcelona. It was advertised as a 10-day trip, which for me was actually an 11-day trip because traveling from the United States to Rome, you lose a day going through the time zone. Because Contiki plans out the accommodations, transportations, and meals, it's one flat price for the trip. Now, you can have Contiki reserve your airfare. However, the control freak in me wanted to purchase my airline tickets separately so I can control which airline I flew and the specific flight that I was on. I wanted to control that. But if you did have Contiki reserve your airfare, then that would be included in the flat rate as well. And there are some benefits to knowing that price ahead of time. If you book your trip far enough in advance, it gives you plenty of time, hopefully, to save up to pay off the trip. You just have a final deadline to make all of your payments, which is usually 1 to 2 months before the trip starts. And you can do that as a lump sum payment, or they even allow you to make payments month by month until that final payment deadline. So either option, knowing that final trip price ahead of time does have some benefits versus planning a trip on your own and not knowing the true cost of what your trip is going to cost you financially. So paying for your airline tickets, your hotel, your other transportation, everything all at different times can be kind of hard to know what the true cost of your trip. You won't know that until virtually the end of your trip. Whereas doing a trip with a group travel company, you have that ahead of time. Now, there are a couple costs that you incur during your trip that aren't part of that flat rate for the trip, and that includes any excursions or activities, or what Contiki calls free time add-ons. Those are optional activities that you can choose to go on with your group and you would pay for those when you're at your destination on the trip itself, as well as any additional meals or any other activities or sites that you want to visit. Those are kind of separate from the price, but the bulk of the price for Contiki's trips pretty much covers everything, and you know that ahead of time. About 30 days before the trip began, Contiki opened up the chat feature in our trip portal so that we could chat with other people going on the trip. And then about 3 to 5 days before the trip started, our trip manager created a Facebook group and added us all into that group, which was super helpful because then we could, for the first time, see who all was going on the trip, get to know them a little bit more, as well as coordinate when everyone was going to be getting to Rome. I landed in Rome on the first day of our trip, so our meeting time was 4 p.m. My flight landed around 11 a.m. in the morning, and another one of the girls on our trip's flight landed an hour after mine. So her and I were able to coordinate meeting up at the hotel and go out to lunch. We actually met another girl in the lobby of the hotel, so 3 of us, Alyssa, Kelsey, and myself, got to meet each other before our trip actually started and get to know each other, and that was super cool. Now, for some of the questions that Namtha asked, she was interested on going on the Rome to Barcelona by train trip that was offered a month after I had gone on it. She messaged me on Instagram with some really good questions. So first one, how was it and what were your favorite cities and activities? Okay, so I loved the trip. It was a blast. My favorite city will always be Rome. Rome holds a special place in my heart. I've been there about 3 times now, but I would say a shocker city that I wasn't expecting to love as much was Barcelona. And that's because I had some weird preconceived notions about Barcelona being from the United States and knowing so many people that studied abroad in Barcelona. I had this image of it being such a party city where everyone was drunk and there was lots of raves and it was dirty. But then actually going to it, at least the parts that I visited in Barcelona, it was clean, the food was delicious. I met some really interesting people. I had a blast in Barcelona, so that was a city I was not expecting to love as much as I did. Next question she asked, it does seem like there's quite a bit of free time versus other tours where they either do free walking tours or at least one free activity in each city. Did you find this was actually better than having every minute planned out? Which is something really interesting. This particular trip, the Rome to Barcelona by train trip, had quite a lot of free time versus other trips that Contiki has or other companies, the trips they offer. They have more free time add-ons or activities planned into their trips. So that was a complaint of a lot of people in my group that complained about that there was so much free time. So for better or for worse, depends on kind of what you're looking for. Having the free time was great because if you had different interests in compared to other people in your group, you could go off and do your own thing versus having every minute planned out. But I will say, I wished we would have had a guided tour of each city as soon as we got to each city, which we only had a tour in Rome from our trip manager, walking tour. We had a bike tour in Nice, which I'm not a huge fan of bike tours. And then there was a bike tour option in Barcelona, which I skipped out on. And a bunch of us did a guided tour in Barcelona that we paid for, and that was so awesome. So that is something that I would recommend if you did the Rome to Barcelona trip, would be to schedule a guided tour through a company such as Free Tours by Foot, Get Your Guide, something like that in each city, because they really help you get acclimated as well as learn some cool history and stories about the places that you're in. Was going to the casino in Monaco worth it? I'm a huge F1 fan, so I would love to walk the track after dinner, but I also get hectic FOMO, fear of missing out, so not sure what to choose. Doing the free time add-on of going to Monaco is definitely worth it and everyone should do it. It is a little bit extra, but that includes your train ticket there. You get a dinner which has some pretty good food and wine, and you get to walk up to the Monte Carlo casino. You do have to pay a separate admissions fee to get into the Monte Carlo casino, which I believe is roughly around 16 euro. And they do give you 5 to 10 euro of free play to play in the casino, I believe. Look up their website for the accurate prices, but I believe that's what it was. The Monte Carlo casino is definitely an experience that you should check out. It is a casino decorated like a royal palace. There's nothing like it. So I say that is definitely worth the trip. Just remember to bring your passport because you will need that for the Monte Carlo casino. So Namtha did watch my vlog. So this next question is, please tell me more about the boat trip in the Cinque Terre. It isn't listed on our itinerary and it looked like an absolute highlight. So there was a lot of free time on this trip, and my group on the train ride from Rome to La Spezia, which was the home base for the Cinque Terre, did some research and planning. There was one girl specifically that was researching different boat cruises that we could do in the Cinque Terre. So when we got there the next day and explored the Cinque Terre that evening, we all participated in a cruise where we got to see a different view of the Cinque Terre. It was like a 2-hour boat cruise and totally worth it. I will link down below the company that we used. I don't believe that Contiki has added this to the trip yet, even though all of us put in our evaluations that they need to add this to it. So if you do go on this trip, convince your group to do the boat cruise in the Cinque Terre. Definitely worth it. So I'll link that down below if you want to check them out. What add-on is a must and which ones are a miss? For sure, a must is Monaco City. That for sure is a must. Loved that one. A miss, so we had 2 bike tours, one in Nice and one in Barcelona as free time add-ons. I have looked at Contiki's website and it looks like they've removed the bike tour in Nice, I believe. Looks like they removed one of them. But either way, I'm not a fan of bike tours, and having 2 was extreme, let alone just one. It's hard to hear your tour guide being so far away just because logistically you're on a bike and you can only get so close to your tour guide. So there was just some things about doing a bike tour that was not my jam. If you like bikes, do the bike tour, but that was a miss for me. Next question, something that you wish you had and something you wish you hadn't packed. So I did do a video, again, linked down below, everything's linked down below, of what I wish I had packed and hadn't packed for this trip, and kind of goes into a little bit more detail, but I'll just kind of pick the top one. So something that I wish I had packed would be another portable charger. I had at the time my cell phone, as well as a mobile hotspot. And so using those all day when we were out and about, both were constantly being drained of battery life. And so I was switching between both of them with the one portable charger that I had. So having another, well, in reality, not packing a mobile hotspot and going with like an eSIM card would have been more ideal, but another portable charger, we're just planning out the charging situation a little bit better. And then just having loose fitting clothing because it was so hot. Now I did pack a lot of Band-Aids and shoe inserts, so those helped in all the walking that we did. Changing out your shoes every other day can help as well. So those are some things to keep in mind. But again, check out what I wish I had and hadn't packed. I'll leave that linked below. That gives you a little bit more insight on what I wish I would have packed. Okay, so those were some of the questions that Namtha had that I thought were great questions that anyone could benefit from. Ultimately, I really enjoyed the trip. Going solo was not an issue, and there were other people that brought friends along. It either way is a great opportunity to meet people. I had a blast meeting Morgan. Shout out to you for hosting the trip. There were so many different personality types, from those extroverted, introverted, those that like to drink and party, those that like to go to bed early. There really wasn't any peer pressure that I felt to go out and drink. So you could find and connect with people that were more like-minded and not feel left out from the whole group. Some things that I wish I would have done differently, or things to consider, because this trip is considered an open jaw trip, meaning we started in Rome and ended in Barcelona, and I did not extend to other cities on either end. I was flying from the United States to Rome and flying back to the United States out of Barcelona, and that airline ticket can be rather expensive, and it can be a little bit cheaper to fly in and out of Rome round trip to the United States than doing an open jaw. So it could have been worth it to consider just flying from Barcelona back to Rome on a cheap flight there, and then having my international airline ticket be round trip. So that's something to consider. If I hadn't already been to Rome before, I could have added more days on the end of the trip to Rome. So fly back to Rome, spend some more days in Rome, and then still have that round trip ticket in and out of Rome. That's something to consider as well. So I hope this answered some questions that you may have had about my trip from Rome to Barcelona by train, or some questions you may have about group travel. Let me know in the comment section below if there are any other questions that I didn't answer, or have you been on a trip with a group travel company and what was your experience? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now.